I don't care what anybody says. You're never going to stop learning. So any of these guys that pat themselves on the back that know everything, they're just foolish because it's always changing.
You want to feel the difference. And when that rod tip is too stiff, that very subtle different pull is indiscernible from those little taps.
People will go up, they don't see bass popping, they make a couple casts, they leave. But they don't take the time to try and figure out what's going on under the surface.
You know, they'll sit there, do 5 of those drifts and not catch one fish and just go. They'll just keep going to the next spot. Right. Not me, I'm staying there.
You know, you have that moment with all sorts of species of fish where you realize you are not the one that's got the upper hand in the fight, and I realized that very quickly. That fish, it took off, it dug my rod tip right into the water.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fat Dad Fishing Show live stream and podcast. My name is Rich Natoli. I am the host of the show, and as usual, we are being joined by our lovely and talented co-host, Ed Gobo, the owner of Captain Hank's Tackle. Ed, how you doing?
Good. You must need jigs or something.
I do. You know, I've been waiting to do the lovely and talented for a while. That's how Letterman introduced Howard Stern. So I was going to do it with George later, but I didn't have a chance to ask him if he'd be offended by the lovely and talented part. So anyway, we are here, and the story lately is just the weather. Florida got smacked. I know a lot of people down in Florida, and luckily, I know it sounds weird, but luckily it went south of Tampa. So Tampa, while damaged, kind of made it through, but I know a lot of people that are just, I'm looking at videos where, you know, guys talking about spending, you know, they're on an island and they're spending an entire 48 hours under a kitchen table, just with the dogs and the wife, just hoping that the roof, which is gone, you know, things don't go flying in where the roof used to be. However, the one guy, he did say, but my boat's good. His boat was fine. Out in the channel, out in the slip. I saw another one where a guy on Instagram, beautiful boat, 4 outboards. I think he's 4 300s, and his boat is sitting in the middle of a cornfield. No damage. He just needs to get a crane to go pick it up. So some people lucked out, but it's been brutal. I
think Skinner's the road to Skinner's house got wiped out or something. He just put up a video.
Yeah, I feel it's not good down there, and but you know, I'm looking at it from the fishing community side, and there's just so many people offering to help out and everything. So we got to see the good in people again, but we're dealing with the remnants, and we unfortunately have this low that is stuck off the coast, which is just crushing the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, and I'm talking the whole mid-Atlantic and Northeast with these Northeast winds, as that low just kind of stalled there, and it's just the rain coming back around and just killing us. Now, nothing like Florida, but man, is it ruining fishing. So
it's cold.
Yeah. So I haven't been fishing. I'm not fishing this week. I'm going to try Thursday. I may be heading to the Chesapeake. I don't know. Or I may be up in the Raritan. I'm not sure. It's going to be the one day where there's decent winds, and I'm going to be in the kayak. If not, I may just go surf fishing or land-based fishing, and I'll go whenever the wind is. Doesn't matter. I'm not so worried about that. So what do you have coming up?
Not much. Just been cranking out jigs. Another video that you put out for baiting the hooks. So
yes,
that kind of pumped up sales again. So just making jigs, man.
That's good. That's not the intent of the videos, but I'm glad that that you're getting a little extra business. For those that aren't aware, I did another video for Salt Strong, and it's on rigging different baits for sheep's head and tog, and how to place them on the hook for better hook placements. So if you want to check that out, it's over on Salt Strong. You can see me essentially with this exact same background. It's a talking head video with some close-ups on how to rig some jigs.
With those hooks, the close-ups are everything, because I've tried to explain it before on the stream, and it's like people kind of get it, but then once they see it and the way it packages, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Well, just be aware you're going to get knocked off soon. So
I've already been knocked off.
I know.
Okay.
Just get ready. So let's just I want to get to George quick, but let's go through the things that we normally go through first. And I want to bring up one of the reviews on the podcast. Again, people, thank you for the ratings and the reviews on Apple Podcasts specifically. That's the one that really is the driver of most of the people that are listening to the show. This one came from Captain Paul 3. Fantastic show. Discovered you guys about a month or so ago. Really enjoy listening to you and your knowledge of local waters. I'm a weekend warrior myself, so it helps me out a lot to cut corners and locate fish more frequently. Look forward to all upcoming episodes. Captain Paul, thank you very much. And again, anybody that finds it in their heart, the audio that you're listening to right now with a little bit of editing is exactly what's going to be on the podcast. Comes out at 12 a.m. every Thursday. So this will actually be on what's coming up with George Thursday morning at 12 a.m. So if you want to listen to it in your car, it's a good way to do it. You don't have to leave YouTube open and, leave your phone on and, the screen's active, which is the pain with this, with YouTube. You can just listen to it on a podcast. So there's that, and want to recognize the people that are in the chat already that we can see. We have Bill D, who is a member of the channel. We have KB7771, also a member. James Flynn, also a member. And then we've got, let's see. Oh, that's me, Fat Dad Fishing. We have Adam. We have Kenzo Jim, one of the winners from before. Rob Widmeyer, and that Asian angler. So we have Qua in there, David Cohen, and AC0. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. The question real quick, where's the video defining how to rig bait for sheep and tog? Go to Salt Strong on YouTube, and it's one of their most recent videos up there. So you'll see it. You'll see my ugly mug up there. Actually, I think it's the thumbnail is a picture of sheep's head on the bottom. Andrew Sokol is also in, so hello. And I think that really covers it. And I want to bring one thing up on screen as we bring George on, and I want to show this before he comes on, because this is going to be the first question. And I hope that he knows, Matthew, what color sand is best on a full moon ebb tide in November? Asking for a friend. I saw that on Facebook. I was like, this guy, I don't know who this guy is, but I want to be his friend right now, because that is awesome. That is awesome. So George, you want to tell us about the best sand color?
I get that a lot from Matt. He's great.
I saw that. I keep laughing. I was laughing so hard, and I went back and looked at it a couple times, because that is just the perfect type of question to put up there. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody does want to know that.
He sent me a few others behind the scenes that he messaged me that I said, please don't ask those questions.
Well, if he's here, he can ask any question, and Ed'll be taking a look at it, and he'll be popping them up on screen. So George, welcome. So happy that you're here on stream with us tonight. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rich. How you doing, Ed?
Good, man. Good. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, we try to cover a lot of different topics, and we do a lot of fluke stuff, a lot of tog. We got some striped bass, sheep's head, but one of the things that we don't do, I think, enough of is the land-based fishing. Chris Matusin's been on a few times, and he talks about the back bay striped bass, and man, he's on top of that. We have Bayside Dave, who really talks a lot of the bait fishing off of LBI, and he's been really helpful, and he's been actually hoping that both of those guys will be coming back, because striped bass is coming up.
Oh yeah.
But George, you are one of the guys in New Jersey that when you hear surf casting, and I say surf casting instead of surf fishing, because I think it puts it at a little bit different level. True surf casters,
right? Yeah.
You're a true surf caster, and just wanted to have you on to kind of share some of the knowledge that you have with folks.
I think that comes out of necessity for some guys. If you want to be able to get big bass and you don't have a boat, you better get good at the surf. Yeah. You're not going to find some of the true bigger fish in the back bays. You're talking 30, 40, 50 pounds. You're going to get them in the surf.
Yeah. and which is why I need to tag along with you, because I still don't have my 50-pounder.
Yeah.
I'm not even close. My largest, I think my PB is around 47 inches.
I just you kind of stop after a while. You stop. Not trying to sound conceited or anything, but I don't measure and I don't weigh them. I try to get a photo and release them.
Yeah, I don't keep any unless I gut hook them, but I don't really fish with bait anymore for striped bass, so it's pretty hard to gut hook one. I did have one not revive a couple years ago up in the Raritan, which was really weird, but it wasn't a huge thing. It wasn't huge. It was still in the slot, thank God. So I could at least keep it, and I think it was a 28 or 29, but
perfect.
Not really into that.
Yeah.
So let's start off with this. I'd like to know, really, what's your opinion on the fishery right now? Because that's always the big argument, big debate. Yeah.
Well, and I'm going to probably get into a lot of things that are my opinion, and right or wrong. It's what I think.
Yeah.
I've been told that maybe I'm wrong, but I believe, as you know, I think there's three large populations of striped bass. You have the Hudson River and Raritan Bay fish, which are thriving and strong. I mean, I probably spend more time up there in spring and fall than I do down in South Jersey now, just because the fishing is so good. The Delaware Bay, and I'm sure from the Delaware Bay days, the chunking days and the rips days, that they're gone. They're all but gone. And the Chesapeake Bay is basically a shell of itself from what it was. Why? Is it the bunker netters? Is it overfishing? I don't know, but that's not the same. And I think in the fall, what you have is, you get the migratory fish. Really, we're waiting for those Chesapeake Bay fish and Delaware Bay fish to come back down. Do those Raritan Bay fish even come down this far? I don't think they do. I think that maybe they'll get as far as LBI, and then they turn and they go back and they winter back up in that area, whether it's off the coast or in Raritan Bay. I don't know, but so waiting for fish to come down the coast now, where it used to be in October, you would start to get good fish on the jetties and on the beaches. Now we're looking at, the prime time start for good fishing is right around Thanksgiving now. And then it runs into December and even January. I've gone on the beaches and caught fish in January.
You bring up a really good point about, do those fish even make it down anymore? And it really doesn't seem like it, because I mean, you fish Raritan, I fish Raritan for striped bass. They're always there. They never leave. And I'll tell you what, there seem to be more just resident bass now down south. And it's not, I remember back in the day where it would clear out. And there would be some residents, but it seems like there's more residents and less migratory now.
I mean, there used to be even more residents. And this is another opinion. I think that the bonus tag is allowing, people to keep a lot of these resident fish. So where you may have had a 20 or 30, fish bite, you're only going to see maybe 10 or less. And this year in particular, usually in the summer, I can go in the back and find resident fish anywhere. And it was a struggle this year to find resident fish in the back.
Yeah. So you're not a fan of the bonus tag then?
I have one. But
why do you have one?
It's break glass in case of emergency.
Okay.
I carry it with me. If I get that 25 or 26 incher that swallowed something deep, I'm not gonna waste it. And I do eat fish, so I will keep fish occasionally.
Yeah. Yeah. I had considered getting one and just kind of rolling through them, even though I didn't catch anything.
Yeah.
Just to burn the tags, but they seem to never run out. So
I was gonna say they print unlimited tags. So
yeah. Well, I mean, as for a fish that we're trying to get to come back, you see some of these charter captains who just burn through sets of 25 one day after another. It's like we're trying to build back this, the population of these fish, and these guys are just, they'll show up to all the meetings, and then they'll go grab their 25 tags. Right. So that drives me crazy. You either want to save them or you don't want to save them. You got to pick one or the other.
Right. Rules for thee, but not for me.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you can't keep those two, but I'm going to keep these 31 on this boat today.
Yeah.
Which I get it. It's their business. I don't want to come down too hard on them, but at the same time,
that's short-term vision, though.
It is.
Have either of you guys listened to Tony from the Guidepost, his podcast?
No.
He's worth listening to. He gets real big into the meetings and stuff. He's down in the Chesapeake, and he, if you listen to him, there's definitely a real problem.
Oh yeah, I had a buddy that had a cabin down there and on the Potomac. He was to go down for years. He sold it. He said it's gotten so bad that it's not worth me trailering my boat down anymore. So he sold his cabin.
Wow, that's a pretty big indictment of the fishery. You know, when you're selling a house, selling a cabin for a sportsman. That's almost like cutting your arm off.
Right. Yeah.
Man. Well, hopefully he got something good up here to replace it.
He's got me.
There you go. There you go.
Well, I got him. So we jump on that boat a lot.
We have an interesting comment right now from Andrew Sokol, and I'd like your thoughts on this. And I don't know that we can really say if it's true or not, but there you go. My personal belief is the majority of the bigger bass migrate outside the 3 mile line. What's your thought on that?
I think usually when I see a comment like that, that's usually from a younger angler that hasn't seen the best of it.
Yeah.
98, 99, 2000, 2001, those years where, the ocean literally, a mile off Ocean City, it was bass on the surface as far as I could see in every direction. And, big fish, small fish. And I've gotten into some big fish, plenty of big fish inside of 3 miles.
But do you think it's changed at all? Because we did hear, we had, who was it, Ed? Was it Captain Halkias saying that they were catching the striped, or maybe it was Leggio? They were catching the striped bass out in the Hudson.
Yeah.
I think it was Joey.
Was it Joey? I mean, I think it might have changed. I don't know. I don't know where I stand on it.
I mean, when the population was stronger, were those fish always out there and we just didn't know it? We didn't see them because you didn't have to go that far. I know guys that go 20 or 30 miles and will, accidentally come across them, But my belief is that they've always been out there. And I think probably the best analogy I ever heard was a captain in Cape May told me that if you laid a map of the East Coast down and had a softball and you rolled that softball up and down the coast, that was the biomass of striped bass. He said, then it shrunk down to about a baseball. And he said, now put a golf ball and roll that golf ball up and down the coast. He goes, and that's basically what the biomass of striped bass has done. So it's shrinking and moving up and down the coast. Now, I also believe, it's broken up into a couple different groups. So our golf ball might be more like a
marble.
A marble, yeah.
It's beginning to feel that way. I mean, it's the one good thing about New Jersey is you have that great Raritan fishery. I mean, that is insane up there. I mean, you can literally catch them year round, and you can catch nice ones year round.
It gets crazy, but it's great.
It does. But then down south, I mean, like you talked about it, the rips are dead. I mean, that was such the legendary place to go. The rips, Cape May Point, and nobody fishes there unless they want spiny dogfish anymore.
And just even chunking in the Delaware Bay, I had days where we had 20. I think we had 26 fish over 40 inches in one tide.
That was a regular day. That was not. You weren't like, oh my god, I can't believe it. You're like, we hit it on the right day.
Yeah. We couldn't fish 2 rods each. We had to only fish 1 rod each. It was good.
I was telling Ed, because he's such a young buck. I was telling him when back in the day we were fishing the backwaters, and 2 of us, and we went down to we started with 4 lines out chunking backwaters, and we're catching so many fish that we went down to 1 each, and then we went down to just 1 rod, and then we had to stop for a couple hours. And we're just sitting there on the hook, and we're eating sandwiches, and we're talking, and we're like, well, let's give it a go again. And as soon as you drop the rod, it was on again. I mean, we were absolutely exhausted. I mean, you could have pulled out, and this went on all day, all tides, everything. And that's the way it used to be.
Yeah. I could leave my house and say, I'm just going to go for an hour or 2 because I'm close to like the Ocean City area, and I could just take off for an hour and catch a bunch of fish and be like, all right, that's enough. I'm going to go home. I scratched that itch. Now it's, you got to bounce around the spots. You got to look here, look there. It's become more of a grind, and I don't mind that. I don't mind working for the fish. I mean, if you're going to be a land-based fisherman, if you're going to be a surf fisherman, you better get used to working hard. Some of And I learned from some really hardworking fishermen that's what it was going to take if you wanted to be successful. You know, their attention to detail and the hard work that they put in. And so you start working like them, and next thing you know, you start seeing the payoffs.
Yeah. Well, so that's exactly why we wanted you to be on, because you know this stuff, right? You can help people kind of get the right, and mindset is part of it, you know. And I think right now a lot of people go on social media and they see, hey, George caught something. They must be busting up and down the entire coast. I'm going to go out there for my 20 minutes. I'm going to bag my 40-incher. I'm going to get my picture, and I'm going to be back at the house in a couple minutes. And it's just, it's just
and what they didn't say besides that picture was the day before when I went and walked 6 beaches to see what they looked like at low tide, and you know, checking moon phases and what the tides are like and water clarity and what kind of bait's moving around, what kind of wind direction I have, you know, and that all comes into play. You know, especially in the fall. I think in the fall it's probably more important than even in the spring. Just a simple wind direction, like the beginning of this northeaster, which I believe was like Friday. It started Friday night. If there was going to be a window for me, it was going to be Friday night. Sure, you can go out and you can and fish in that nasty weather, but I'm 55 years old. I really don't feel like standing out in that much anymore, unless I really know I got to go. But like Friday night, the first day of those blows really are the day you want to be out there. That's when you want to get started on those big northeasters. You know, you keep hearing all these northeast things. You know, McReynolds got his fish on September 21st of '82, and I think that was the first day of a nor'easter. You know, which coincided with a mullet run. But we don't see, you know, do we see those big fish in September anymore? I don't know, because I don't go out there. Could be, you know, I'm not out there in September. I'm doing other things.
Right.
But yeah, that first day, and then, you know, as we go later into the year, bunker swim into the wind. So, you know, when I see a northwest wind in October, late October, early November, I see a northwest wind. I'm probably going to be on the beach somewhere. That bunker is going to come right into the beach, especially if it's like 2 days into a northwest. Everything will be right in front of you. Everything will be right on the beach.
That's the way to do.
That's a nugget I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of people will fish the southeast wind, thinking it's pushing everything in, and it will to some extent, but it doesn't. It's not where they actually want to go. No,
I don't know if you remember last year, if you were paying attention to what happened up in Seaside in December. Like we had a couple of days of northwest winds when the peanuts were coming out of like the Raritan.
Yeah,
and it was just insanity in Seaside, Lavalette, that whole stretch, Island Beach. The bunker came pushing in, and it was literally bass breaking, in every direction as far as you could see. And there was also, it was shoulder to shoulder combat fishing. But what a good time that was! So
I miss those days. It's been a long time.
We'll have it again. It'll happen again this year. You just gotta know, watch the weather and pick those right days and save some vacation days. Like I got 3 weeks of vacation still to go. I'll be using every one of them.
So you're gonna so the mullet run. Let's start. This question was already asked earlier. Has the mullet run started that you've noticed, or are you still waiting?
Yeah, the mullet were a little late this year. I noticed the mullet were a little late this year. They kind of hung out right inside of the inlets from what I saw in my area. After this weather, I expected that they were going to be moving. They like to move on these big tides and big weather. I did go look today, but it was like the water was yoo-hoo. It was like whitewater yoo-hoo, and I didn't see any mullet. I'm sure if I'd looked a little harder in tight on the beach, they probably would have been some mullet washing up right on the beach.
Right.
But I like to fish the mullet run. It's usually productive enough to go. And that's just basically walking open beaches, finding, down South Jersey, it's a lot more difficult than anywhere else, the rest of the state. South Jersey doesn't have much structure. It's really shallow for a long ways. So you're going to want to throw like shallow swimming things. I like red fins and mag darters. And you're going to fish them pretty close, pretty close to the jetties, pretty close to the beach. A lot of the fish are going to come right on the backside of that shore break. There really isn't much of a shore break. So I primarily will focus, like if I'm going to look for fish on mullet around the high tide, and I'm going to look for those mullet schools or any kind of structure, and it's usually very subtle because the cuts aren't real deep,
Right.
the troughs aren't real big here, so you just got to kind of walk the beach. And there'll be times where I'll walk a mile. I'll go to a beach and I'll just walk and throw and walk and throw. Maybe I'll see a cut and I'll work that cut, and you'll pull a couple fish and you keep moving, or a little groin or a jetty, and you work that, you pull a couple fish. But real, just shallow running things. And if I'm going to go at night, there's always a teaser. I always have a teaser in front of my plug. A black teaser in front of a black mag darter is pretty much standard, or a black bomber if you don't need to cast it as far. And working it painfully slow. I'm one of them guys. I am that guy that works it painfully slow, that tells you if you're working it slow, work it slower. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're that guy that I have a hard time listening to.
Yeah.
Because I listen to it and I know I should go slower, and I can't make myself do it.
Rich, there's times where I'm not reeling. You don't even reel. You're just kind of letting the waves and the tide kind of pull it. And you're not even, your hand's not even on the handle, and they're hitting it.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I know what I should do. And I have
you feel like you have to have contact. You feel like if you don't feel it swimming, it's not going to get hit, but that's not always true.
Right.
They're looking for that wounded, slow thing that's crawling across the surface.
Oh, right. And something getting washed with the current is definitely going to look like it's swimming. It's going to look injured because it's not moving naturally. So you're fishing all artificials, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So when you go down, okay, there are two questions here. So two scenarios. So let's go with the first scenario. You're going down by yourself. There's not a ton of people around. What kind of rod and reel are you bringing down for that? And the next thing is it different when you're going down when people are lining up for a blitz?
Yeah. If I'm going local and I'm staying on the beach local to me, which is South Jersey, which I consider South Jersey south of LBI. That's it. I'm probably going to bring my either a 7.6 or an 8 foot, just something like maybe a 4,000 or 5,000 size reel. If I know I'm not going to be in the water, I don't need a Van Stahl. I don't need anything that's water resistant, waterproof, and I'll walk the beach. If I'm going to be fishing in more of like if I'm going to go say north of Brigantine and fish, say Island Beach State Park, Seaside, anywhere up there, I'm going to bring my 9-footer. And I'm probably going to have a Van Stahl or VR. A lot of times I'll throw the VR 125 because I'm not actually going in the water up there. So the VR on a 9-footer, a pretty stiff 9-footer. I use a Kevlar Nor'easter, which has got some backbone, but it allows me to throw light stuff if I need it. So that's about it right there. Those
okay.
And for the bigger stuff, if for some reason, and this happens, in late October, we'll get a push of big fish are going to come by us. And if you get like that perfect storm where the wind's right and the bait pushes in, you're going to hope that you have like the 11-footer in the truck,
right?
And have that ready with a pencil popper that I can, launch 100 and something yards, which has happened to me, just lucky, right place, right time. Island Beach State Park, fished all night without a touch. And as the sun started coming up, I could hear something going on in the ocean. And I squinted as just starting to get light. And I saw a whale come straight out of the water breach. And I saw the bunker falling out of its mouth. And I was like, well, there's bunker close. Yeah. And then I saw the bunker start spraying in other places. And I had one pencil popper in my bag. It was an after hours junior blip. And I had my 9-footer with me. But my 9-footer, it was overrated. The plug was overrated for the rod, and I threw that plug as hard as I could, expecting it to blow up into 3 or 4 pieces, but it reached, and right away I got a 45-inch bass, and then I got another like 42-inch bass, and then I hooked another one that freight trained me and took my plug. But I was thrilled that
once you landed the first two, that one, now you got the story.
Yeah,
you got the story. I landed the 47. I couldn't stop this one.
Yeah, it was big fish. It was fun.
I always had the problem where I can never quite reach. I can never quite reach where they are. I I have this mental block where I don't put the rods to the test like I should.
There comes a point where I'll throw normally, and then I'll say, I don't care what happens to this rod. I don't care if this line can't hold a full throw, and I throw it with bad intentions.
Yeah.
And and there's a fine line between overthrowing and short casting it, and really getting everything behind it and getting every inch that you can out of the rod that you have in your hand.
Yeah, I'm just, full disclosure, I'm not that guy. I'm just not a distance caster. And there have been a lot of times in the past. There were years between boat and a kayak where I was strictly surf and backwater land based, and I was that guy. You're lined up. You're not shoulder to shoulder, but you got a good 40 yards in between everybody, all the way down. Like up in Lavalette or something.
Yeah.
And they're coming through, and I'm as hard as I can, and I'm missing them by 30 yards, and I'm just reeling in, and I'm walking down to watch the guy next to me. I'm like, I'm not going to I can't do it. I just can't make it out there. And it was parts the rod, parts me, but hey, it is what it is.
That's when you throw metal on and get everything you can out of it. You throw a chunk of metal, you throw some kind of jig that'll get you every inch you can.
That's usually what I do. I throw a Hopkins on there or something like that. I don't really like the diamond jigs, but yeah.
It's interesting is in the fall, I don't really think that distance is as much of a factor as like the spring. In the spring, for me, in the spring, when I'm looking for big fish, it's all about distance. A lot of it is distance, and you better be able to cast far if you want to get some big fish in the spring, at least down in South Jersey.
Right.
Either that or you better be prepared to really get in the water and get out there a ways, so, and I'll leave it at that. That's wetsuit stuff in hairy conditions.
Wow. Did you see the pictures up at Montauk?
I did.
The two guys out there.
Yeah, I did.
It takes some stones to be out there in a nor'easter, and these guys weren't just standing in the water. I mean, they were out to their shoulders.
Yeah, and I saw a couple of the shots where they were just going, and all you saw was the rod sticking up out of the wave. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It's fun for about 15 minutes, and then I'm done. I'm done with it.
The only time I did that and liked it was when I was fishing Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, in the summer, and you couldn't fish because everyone was in the water and they didn't have lifeguards, so you could go anywhere you wanted. So my buddy and I just grabbed our rods, we swam out behind them, and it's like up to our chin, and we're just surf fishing out beyond everybody because that was the only place we could safely do it. That was awesome until we started catching sharks. And then releasing a shark right at your face is not fun, but yeah. So let's talk. Okay, so the gear makes sense. So now you're using really nice. You mentioned the one rod. So what's your favorite types of rods that you would recommend to somebody who's experienced? And then is there something that you would recommend to beginners?
I mean, if you were just gonna be surf fishing, probably an 8-foot or 9-foot rod that can handle maybe a 1/2 ounce to 3, something in that range. And you got to check the rods. You got to use the rod. Just because the rating says a 1/2 to 3 doesn't mean that it's going to throw a 1/2 great and 3 great.
Right.
Some rods will throw that 1/2 to 3. Its sweet spot is 1 ounce. Some others will be 2 ounces. I think St. Croix is probably known for that with their 9-footer. Their 9-footers are like broomsticks to me.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, this is rated to 1/2 to 3, and then you go to try to put a 1/2 on it, and there's no way you can feel it.
Right.
So you want to test your rods, but yeah, 8-foot, 9-foot. 9-foot is probably a great universal size for you can get away with spring and fall with a 9-foot rod, even an 8-foot rod. It like you had mentioned, I think before we came on, standing in a lineup of guys with a 9-foot rod, and guys kind of giving you a funny look. And in the spring, when we kind of get to some of the more popular spots that get crowded, it drives me crazy when a guy gets into the lineup with like a 7-foot rod, and we all have our 10s and 11s, and he hooks up, and I'm down current. So I'm hooked up. You have to get out of the water, and I tell him, if you can't fight it from where you're standing, then you need better gear, because I'm not moving.
Yeah, well, even a 9-foot will do that too. The thing with my 9-foot is it will handle. It'll handle a 50-inch fish.
Yeah.
And I don't have to move, but it doesn't look like it's going to.
No, I
can
definitely
doesn't.
I can understand when you foul hook something, maybe you get it on top of the head or you get it under the chin or the side. Yeah. I can't stop this fish. It's either bigger than I think or I got him hooked funny. All right, let me get out of the way.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, out of respect for people, I actually stopped, when people are lining up, I would just kind of move out because I could handle it, but it was still at the lower end. I was pushing the lower end of what I should have been out there with. And the last thing I wanted to do was start having to move down the beach.
Yeah.
Because then you're that ass, and no one's going to ever want you back. So I think people have more respect for me. At least I hoped when I just reel in, I say, good luck. And I just walk way to the end. And just try to get whatever comes off the tail end of the movement.
Yeah.
But, that's what happens when you're, I think a lot of people need to be a little bit more aware, I obviously shouldn't have been standing in the middle of these guys.
And and I can understand people that maybe they stumble upon a good bite and that's the only rod they have. That's fine, and I don't mind helping people. I don't mind moving out of the way for people. You can usually tell right away somebody is kind of new to it and they happen to stumble into a good bite, or somebody told them about a good bite. And then you help them out, and then you also help them out by saying, hey, if you want to do this on a regular basis, maybe you ought to think about this or this kind of gear or that kind of gear.
Yeah. I definitely have to up my my game on the surf gear. What about you, Ed? You have any of your stuff?
I have. My dad gave me his St. Croix Triumph. I think it's 11 foot. So I have that, and I got a 9-footer. But I honestly don't put an effort into surf fishing. Like I take the boys, we go, throw fish bites for kingfish.
You're looking for tight lines, not necessarily big fish.
Yeah, I never really got into it. I never put the effort into it.
There's something about, and you catch fish all over the place in boats and everything, but hooking a decent sized striped bass or even bluefish in the surf it's just a whole different thing. It's like a whole different element to me. I love it. I'm sure, and I think anybody that's done it and done it successfully will tell you the same. I'll take that every day over a good boat trip, a good surf trip over a good boat trip.
See, and like the thing for me is, like I said, I never put the effort into it, so I never got to experience.
Yeah,
right. So
you just need to go for the Raritan in the spring.
Right. I mean, who knows, if I catch a fish, it might be my new obsession. I don't know. I don't have any experience with it.
Yeah, you go up into the Raritan in the springtime. You'll get your experience real quick. You'll get to know whether you like it or not quickly.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we need to plan for that, Rich.
I
got the gear. I got waders and.
My job is now fishing. So
it's such a large area that you can find spots that aren't crowded. You just like Sandy Hook's a huge area. You can find spots in there, and even further up and in, and if you were willing to drive a little bit over onto the New York side, there's just tons of space. Really, you can fish and get away from people. Some of the places require a lot of walking, and I prefer that. I'll take that half-mile or mile walk just to get away from everybody. And then you find out that there's 20 guys there.
Right. Well, but they're now your 20 guys because they went through that effort as well. So You at least got something there. They weren't driving right up. And
you're not going to get the weekend warriors aren't going to walk,
right,
for a half an hour to get to a spot.
Yeah, exactly. So, let's talk about this. When you're heading down to, let's say you're going somewhere you've never been there, and you're going, it's during the day, whether that's the best time to fish or not. Let's put that aside. You're walking down a beach for the first time. What are you looking for striped bass specifically in the fall?
In the fall, I'm going to be looking for bird play. Most likely, I'll be looking for bird play. Even birds just sitting on the water, birds flying and picking on the water, in the surf. Depending on the water clarity, I'm looking for dark spots and bait, maybe bait balls that are in the wash or in range. Maybe if I don't see any of that, I'm going to look for structure, and I'm going to start to probably pound some structure, whether it's jetties and groins, and cuts in the sandbars. And that happens pretty often, in the fall, where you think it's going to be good, and you take a ride. I'll take a ride for an hour and work some beaches, and everybody can anybody can look at some of the surf cams, and in the fall, it's funny because I'm just constantly pulling up surf cams, and it's like, oh, I see a bunch of birds, and then I'll call a buddy, do you see the surf cam in this town? And we'll both look at it and be like, all right, let's go. And then you get up there and the birds are gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's mainly what I'll do. I'll go up there and look for that. And you got to try to figure out what kind of bait you have moving around. It could be peanut bunker. There could be herring. You get later in the fall and into even close to winter, you start to get herring, adult bunker, and the sand eel days. Boy, I miss them. The sand eel days in up north were fantastic. 2011 was just amazing with the sand eel bite, but we really haven't seen that. It's been a peanut bunker bite mostly in the fall the last few years.
I mean, they're all over. You can't get away from the peanut bunker now.
No, you can't even run a plug through some of the spots in the back. You'll have peanut bunker stuck on every hook.
Yeah, or at the very least, you have the scales sitting right on the tip of the hook. You're like, well, that's not going to help me hook something. You got to clean them off. Yeah, clean them off left and right. So what are the lures that you're using? So what's your first lure for let's say top water?
I love pencil poppers. If I'm fishing in the surf, a pencil popper. They cast great. You cover a ton of water. With the right rod, with the right rating, you're going to max out your distance with a pencil popper. And especially if you got fish on the surface, they're on the surface, the pencil popper, and I heard you, I think, talking to Scotty about the whole walk the dog thing. And that's basically what pencil popping is. It's a walk the dog style thing. But it's not as much of the wrist action in the surf. You have the butts between your legs, and your hand is up over the reel.
Yep.
And you're kind of just shaking it, you're shaking it. And once you get the cadence down on that, they really throw some water. And I've caught a lot of fish on pencil poppers. I probably own more pencil poppers than any other plug I have in my basement. And I got a lot of stuff down there, but I'm like pencil poppers are my thing. I love them. I make them. I like using other people's, but that's going to be, if I see fish on the surface, that's my go-to. It's going to be a pencil. If I don't see anything, then I'm probably going to throw some, swimming type plugs. The SP minnows are safe. Always got to have one in my bag because they cast great. They swim great. Wood's good, but plastic is fantastic.
Yeah, but you don't quite get the, I don't know. You don't get the same feel. I like the wood.
Yeah. Sure. I love the wood, but if distance matters, the wood's not going to cut it.
No.
I love it's funny because I make plugs, I make metal lips, and I basically give them away, and I've given away, a ton of them, and guys catch fish on them. They catch a lot of fish on them. They catch more fish than I catch on them for sure. So I give them away, and I get all these pictures, and I go, well, I must be out of my mind. I'm giving away these plugs that these guys are catching. I gave one to a guy up in Raritan, and he I got up there. I think I had like one fish or two fish, and I'm just getting one picture after another with my plug hanging out of different fish's mouth. He's like, this thing is slaying. And I'm like, damn.
That's awesome. Oh, I mean, it's frustrating, but it's still, at least you have that where you're like, I had a part in that too, I guess.
Yeah. No, I love it. I went up last year with a guy, and I made a jointed, and I gave him the jointed, and I didn't have one in my bag. I didn't have one of my jointeds in my bag, and he had one of my jointeds, and he was standing next to me, hammering fish on it, and I was getting frustrated as hell. I was starting to get angry. I was like, this is ridiculous. I made that thing, and you're standing next to me killing on it. And then I ended up trying to overcast it. I got a wind knot, had to cut the line out, and it just things start to snowball.
That was the day of the Rich catching the sheep's head.
Oh yeah, George. Ed was in the same position where we went out to test some prototype lures that he made, and we're both using the same thing. And I'm literally right next to him, and I was bailing big sheep's head, and he just kept looking at me, and I'm like, at least it's your lures. They work awesome. And
that's what he wanted to hear.
He was like one of those like, I'm really happy for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I get that really happy thing too.
Yeah, but you got to bring your own lures, man. You can't be making them and not bringing them. You have to be able to represent yourself.
You're on foot. You can only carry so many things,
That's true.
So it's like, it's like where's who gets cut? I lay everything out. I go, who gets cut? And I'll have them in the truck, but a lot of times, A
You're a mile
15-minute
away.
walk back to the truck is not going to. Yeah, I'd say I can't run anymore. I'm overweight and I'm 55. I run about 20 feet and I'm laying on the ground trying to catch my breath.
That's me.
Yeah.
I'll be laying next to you.
We got a question here. Dean's asking you about refinishing plugs for friends.
Yeah,
You
I
love
appreciate
doing
that. Yeah, Dean happened to come across a rather expensive plug builder's plug, and it was beat up, I guess, from the rocks. He asked me to refinish it. So I sanded it down, and I didn't put my respirator on or anything like that. I couldn't breathe for 2 days. And I called him. I said, don't ever hand me somebody else's plug to refinish. Now, instead of taking it off, probably the smartest way, I just decided to sand it down. So I had to sand down the finish and sand the paint off it. And I didn't realize how many layers that plug builder put on his plug.
Oh, man.
I was covered in dust and you know, I blew my nose and it was epoxy. I basically epoxy dust came out of my lung.
That's no
That was
good. Now, how did it look when you were done? And did Dean end up catching things on it?
Now it's down to the wood and it's sitting in my basement and I just walk by it and curse at it every time I go. I haven't painted it yet.
So Dean, he's cursing at you every time he walks by through his
Oh,
basement.
he knows. Yeah, he knows.
That's awesome. Ed, you've had experiences like that too. I know, with the fumes, because we've been talking. You're like, I got to get out of this garage.
Yeah, the when I do my plugs, well, it's not epoxy. It's the clear coat. I dip them in. It's pretty nasty.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I have a fan blowing out. So I'm doing everything in my basement. I have all my, I have basically a wood shop in my basement, and I have a dust collector, and I have all the, the respirator, and I have everything I should be wearing. But a lot of times I get lazy. I only need to sand a couple of plugs. I don't need to put this on,
Right.
And then I'm coughing that up for 2 days.
And now Dean can make fun of you for years.
Dean has more of my plugs than I have. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's great because I'll show him. I'll be like, look at these 3 I made. Oh, I want this one, and he grabs it. And then 2 days later, I made like a purple little pikey last year. I called it Grape Drink, and immediately he started slaying on Grape Drink. So then
Really?
I have him, yeah, which I love.
Sounds like you need to start carrying more of your own.
I do. Yeah. I do.
But to your point, it's a small bag. All right, so we've got the top water covered.
Yes.
And then you're using the swim baits in the middle. You're using something like the SP minnow.
SPs. If it's shallow water, there's always a mag darter in my bag.
Okay.
And mag darters come in 3 sizes. So depending on the bait sizes, the middle version is usually the safest bet. I think that's a 5-inch. Yeah, I think they're 4 1/4, 5, and 6 inch. The 6 inch.
Are you trying to match the hatch, or are you trying to trying to make it like something that stands out?
I think that the mag darter probably matches several things. It's peanut bunker. It's any kind of smaller bait in the wash, and it's such a subtle swim on a mag darter. You work them shallow, you can work them slow, and you can work them fast, but they won't dig into the bottom most of the time unless you're fishing really shallow water. And 9 out of 10 times, if it's at night, I have a teaser in front of that. And it's funny because I fish mostly just black teasers at night, black hair teaser, maybe a little bit of flash in it. I tie those myself with a black mag darter, and 90% of your fish will come on that teaser.
Yeah, I'll just share this. I don't consider myself to be like a really great surf caster. I know what I'm doing, but a lot of people will make fun of you if you put a teaser on. It's the whole big joke. How many teasers are you going to have on in front of your diamond jig, right?
Yeah.
Well, I would always put them on for a striped bass, and I had this chenille sand eel, and it was only about 3 inches long, and I caught more fish on that I think it was 2 years ago. Now I'm down to the last one. I can't find it. The company that made them is out of business, so I have my last one left, so I'm not using it.
Picture.
It's really messed up. I've even gone to expert fly tires, and nobody knows what the hell the material is, but I'll show it to you. But anyway,
Send me a picture.
I caught more fish on that teaser in fluke and striped bass season than on the regular bucktails, on the regular jigs, on the SP minnows. It's only like this big. It's like 3.5 inches.
Yeah,
And
the plug is just a vessel to get the teaser out there.
Yeah.
A lot of times. I went one night, I went to just decided to go walk the beach locally, and not even a beach that it's productive for me. It just felt like getting out and walking the beach. And I was throwing just a mag darter and a teaser, and I hit a couple small fish, like 20-something inch fish on the mag darter, and nothing on the teaser. And then out of nowhere, I got hit, and it was like a 40-something inch fish, and it was on the teaser.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
bigger fish ate that little teaser.
That's awesome. I love that. Now, what size teaser hooks are you using when you're tying those up?
Oh God, I don't even. I'd have to go down to my basement and look. I have boxes that I want to say there are 4-aught.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Okay.
Yeah, not big, not real big.
Right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, mine was only a 2-aught, so I was always amazed when it hooked anything.
Yeah.
That's really small for the size of those mouths. But
yeah,
it worked well. But here's a question that I want to put up there from Sky. Do you like using bucktails at all in the surf?
It's funny. I used to be a huge bucktail guy. I loved bucktails. You go to Montauk, you better have bucktails. And every time I go up there, you still throw bucktails. Around here, I've kind of gotten away from it, and it's funny because that's kind of how I want to say you cut your teeth fishing the jetties with bucktails, and bucktails are very productive. With just a twister tail on it. I don't carry them as much anymore. I usually have 1 or 2 in my bag because they don't take up any space, and there's slots for them, so I might as well put a couple in there.
Right.
But I just don't pull them out too often. I mean, and you get conditions like we have right now. If the water's just even a little bit cleaner, a bucktail would be the way to go. And there's been times where I should have had a bucktail and didn't, and that's what the guys were catching on. You get big water like this, a bucktail's gonna want what you're gonna want. You get big water. If you're fishing inlets, I might as well transition this. If you're fishing inlets, if you're a jig guy and you like throwing the 3/4 or an ounce jigs, that's a good idea. But in heavy moving water, you're gonna want a plug that holds in heavy moving water. The SPs hold remarkably well. The mag darters will hold pretty good, but you get into the super strikes. The super strike bottles are they're for big water and hard moving water. I always have 1 or 2 of those in my bag. I'll go through a handful of them a year. I'm horrible. I lose so much stuff.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I lose stuff. It's amazing.
I can't help it. I lose a lot of stuff.
I don't use swivels between my leader and my main line. I like to tie direct, and a lot of times my eyesight isn't what it was. So if I have to tie in the dark, I might as well just throw that plug into the water.
I've done that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I can tie an FG knot in the dark.
Wow.
I can do it. However, if you mess it up just one loop, it's one cast and your line doesn't go anywhere. Yeah. And it's just the leader goes flying off with the plug. I've done that.
You have a pigtail, a little pigtail on the end, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, God damn it.
Yeah.
I've done that with, $15 lures.
I was in the spring one or like right before dark one year, I had a buddy next to me, and I think I tied 3 bad knots in a row and I'd hook up and fight the fish for a couple seconds, and then my leader would part. And I was tying bad knots. Finally he handed me a leader with a swivel on it and saved me that night. He saved my ass because it was a good bite. And I was frustrated. I was ready to go home.
Yeah, you got in a rut, so you're just going to screw it up every time now because now you're pissed off.
I don't know still don't know what I was doing wrong with my knot that night. I came home and I was like, all right, let me do this. The next day I sat down. I said, all right, let me tie this knot. And everything, I pulled everything, and everything was good. I don't know what I was doing wrong.
What kind of knots are you using when you're doing that?
I just go uni to uni. I keep it simple. Okay. I can do that. I can do it with my eyes closed, and basically that's what it's like when I tie a knot. It's like having my eyes closed.
Yeah. I'm starting to use the uni to uni, especially if I'm not going to be winding it through the guides.
Yeah. No, I don't go through the guides. So yeah, it's
in
perfect.
The backwaters. I do. I go through and like tog fishing. I put a really long leader on there just because I don't feel like tying an FG over and over. So I tie the FG knot,
Yeah. It's uni to uni. So it's so easy to do, and it's strong. You know, they hold. I've had them hold with 40+ pound fish, and they hold.
My understanding is it's the second strongest knot for a braid to leader. So, I mean, you're probably not losing much between the FG and the uni to uni, to be honest.
No, the leader will probably snap before the knot.
Yep. And here's another question for you. Let's go back to your pencil popper. What colors do you prefer?
Usually it's white or white. I like white, bone, yellow. I like the brighter colors. They don't have to be anything fancy. I have seen times where certain colors are working, maybe a red head or something, weird like that. But I think the pencil, it's more of the commotion it's causing. It's more the action of it, a reactionary strike, and not like a color trigger of any kind.
Right. So you're not using Wonder Bread?
I have them. I'm guilty like everybody else. I like cool paint jobs, so I will buy the cool paint jobs, and I even paint some stuff. I like painting cool paint jobs, but when it comes down to it, if I'm going say up to the canal and I need to make some pencils for the canal, I'll pump out like 4 bones or 4 whites, and have
nothing catches like bone. Bone is bone white. Those are it's the best. It's the most versatile color. Yeah. For the simplest color, it's the best. I mean, if you can only have one color, it's got to be white or bone, something like that.
And I think color catches more of the our eye than it does the fish's eye. It's you're either bright colors or your dark colors. At night you want your darks. You get those dark nights. I like dark colors, and you get your bright days or bright nights. You want the bright colors. So I think there really isn't much of a difference as far as I'm concerned between like yellows and whites and the beautiful pinks and all that stuff. They're just bright colors. Maybe the only one that I may think is chartreuse. For some reason, chartreuse sometimes is the color that you want. When I'm throwing jigs with rubber, it's chartreuse. Parrots, those bright greens sometimes will trigger some strikes.
I love greens.
Yeah, me too.
Pinks and greens. Well, white, it's always predominantly white. I mean, Ed knows it. I tell him all the time. I need bucktails, the pinks and the greens. And that's what he makes.
But you would think if chartreuse is working, I would bet that if you had a white on, it would have probably done the same thing.
Most likely. Now there have been some days where I've been out with Ed. Ed is good about telling me just to switch up my colors. And there have been some days, and it wasn't for striped bass, but for other species, where I'm not catching anything, and he'll tell me like switch the color, and he'll say put this color on, and I'll grab that color, and he's catching the whole time, and it does work. But something inside me says the colors are definitely more for us than the fish, but I think sometimes it does matter. And I'll tell you I have noticed that with tog for some reason. I seem to get better bites on tog. Striped bass, I don't know. I just throw out whatever I have in the bag, and I just cycle through until I'm starting to get something. Yeah. But I don't like Wonder Bread though. There's something about it that bothers me.
Really?
Even though it's white, I should love it.
I painted a couple of them. They're weird.
Yeah, Wonder Bread gliders and Wonder Bread stuff. I like it. I do like it.
I did fish one that was Butterfinger. It was called a Butterfinger. So it was yellow. It's almost like the school bus color.
Really?
And
yeah.
That was, I like that. I do like actually yellow pencils.
Well, I guess that's kind of like a goldish yellow, which I like putting a lot of golds when I make plugs. I like a lot of golds, like gold and purple. A lot of fish you hold like if you hold a bunker up, it's got like that gold bunker like shade to it. Especially you move it in the sun, you can see.
So it's iridescent.
Yeah. So I try to do a lot of that when I'm making stuff. A lot of golds and a lot of silver and purple too. Mixing that purple in, I think for me works good.
I'm glad you said that, because the one thing that I've been saying for years, I've said it on here before, is the gold color is so underrated up north and in the Mid-Atlantic. You never hit the water down in Florida, down in South Carolina, in Texas, unless you have a gold spoon.
Mm-hmm.
It's not silver. You're not using silver down there as much, but up here it's all silver. You got a silver Hopkins. I'm like, I just want a gold one. Just give me a gold one. And when I fish a diamond jig, I try to get the ones with that little gold paper on it, which just comes off after it hits 2 rocks. But I like the gold. I
Yeah,
love
so do I.
something that has the gold. It's in gold flecks in it. You know, for the soft plastics, if it has some gold flecks. I don't know why. I like the glitter of the gold in the water, and maybe it is because of the bunker. You know, they do have a little. Now, yes, they're mostly silver, but they do have a little bit of gold.
They get to adults. They turn that silver kind of fades, and they turn more of a like a darker color.
Yeah,
they still have those white bellies, but you know they get that goldish purple to them. Even weak fish, you get the spike this time of year. You get spike weak fish in the wash, and there's a lot of things eating those spike weak fish, and they get that gold purple color to them too.
Yeah, they're all moving out of the back now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They'll you know, especially you go up north and you get those in the surf, and you get these bluefish blitzes in the surf where you know it's just weak fish are washing up all over, all bit in half, and you got heads and tails washing up all over the place, and that's always a good time too.
I actually love when the bluefish come through. Now, do you have a? And mainly, I say that because there's usually striped bass right with the bluefish, right? So, so you see a bluefish blitz coming down the beach. What are you doing? Are you going at the bluefish, or are you looking on the edges or behind for the striped bass?
I'm good with the bluefish for probably a handful of them, and then I'm over it. And then I'll probably slide to the direction that they've come from, or they're moving. You know, let them move away and keep working that water behind them. You know, obviously. The striped bass are just going to be cleaning up. The cleanup crew comes in and they're going to eat all those parts that are left behind.
Yeah.
You know, everything that's floating down to the bottom. Those bluefish, I've seen them where you can see them coming, like the bluefish coming from down the beach. I was at Island Beach one time and I saw them. I'd fished all day without a bite, and I was about to walk off, and an older guy had to be 80 years old. He said to me, "Are you leaving?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm leaving. I haven't had a touch all day." And he said, "Don't leave. They're going to be here." And I was like, what is he talking about? So I said, okay. I walked down on the beach and I fished for about another hour and nothing was going on. I said, this is ridiculous. I'm listening to this guy. And I turned and I started walking off. And as I was walking off the beach, a guy is running onto the beach with like a boat rod. And he goes, they're coming. And I go, what's he talking about? And I had I'm one of them guys. I had my binoculars with me.
Yeah.
And I pulled my binoculars and I looked down the beach. And all I saw was this giant cloud of birds coming down the beach. And I was like, well, here we go. What's this? So I stood there and I watched it. It got closer and closer. And on the bar, I'm looking at the bar. It was a wave of adult bunker came over the bar straight up onto the beach and were beaching themselves. And it was like 15-pound bluefish all over them. And it was just like, you know, my pencil popper, they were ripping it up, like physically just ripping it apart. And after a few fish, I was like, all right, should I try for bass behind these things? Because they came through. It lasted about a half an hour, and they just kept right on going down the beach. I said, do I try for bass? And I said, oh, hell no, I'm not going to try for bass. I jumped in my truck, drove about 3 miles, ran back out on the beach, and there they were coming again. And I did round 2.
So you were the crazy guy running down the beach.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm done with this. I was like, now I'm done with this. There was no paint left on that pencil popper. They ripped the grommet, the belly grommet out.
Yep.
Like the through wire was partially pulled through the hook hole. It was amazing.
I love bluefish. I love them. But what I would have done is probably after, I don't even know if I would have made that run the 3 miles, but tip of the cap to you for that.
I ran to my truck and then drove past them. And then ran back out on the beach. And I don't know, you've been to Island Beach. I don't have a pass to drive on the beach, so it's a long run. You know, I was in a little better shape at the time, so I was able to
ran up all the way back to the parking lot down at the south end of Island Beach. That's not a little run.
At the time, I was at the walk-on. I was on the walk-on section by the maintenance shack. Familiar with it? So I had to run all the way from there. I ran back to my truck at the maintenance shack, and then drove down to like the bathing beach, and then ran out on the bathing beach and got them again.
That's awesome. So when you're there, okay, so you get back into them. Do you then wait for the bass to come behind?
No, at that point I was exhausted. I was done. I'd been there all day. I'd been there literally from sunup, and this didn't happen until like late in the afternoon. Gotcha. You know, and that was the only action I had. But I'd have been kicking myself in the ass had I not listened to that older guy and just said, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." I love listening to some of the older guys. You know, they know, they have more knowledge in their pinky than probably all of us together.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys have seen it all. You know,
and they start sharing when they get older.
Yeah. Well, some of them do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some are going to take it to the grave, but some are just like, hey, let me just give you this little bit that you don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because there was a dude. I would always fish this one spot in on Absecon Island. I'll just say that Absecon Island, which is Longport, Ventnor, Margate, Atlantic City, and I would go and fish in the morning at sunrise, and there'd be these same 3 old guys that parked at the end of the street, and they would have their coffee, and then they would get out and fish the same area. And finally, I walked over and I said, "Why are you guys fishing this same stretch of beach?" And the guy, he says, "Well, right here, there used to be a pier right here." And I said, "Get out of here! I don't remember." Oh, it was years ago. It used to be a pier right here. The pilings are still down there. It catches a lot of sand, and we catch a lot of fish around that. And all 3 of them are gone now. And I still go walk that area and still get fish in that area now.
That's awesome.
I mean, they cover most of it, like they do. They cover everything with sand now. But after this, I would suspect it's probably going to be exposed. That area will be exposed, and there'll be some good fish in there in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, that's awesome. Those are the kind of spots I like to find.
Yeah.
Have you ever done that? Just go and look at the historical satellite images?
Yeah, I spend way too much time on Google Maps and Navionics and everything. I mean, a lot of the back, especially the Back Bay is amazing. You go, I'd love to fish this point, and then you look at it and you go, hey, I might be able to get there if I kind of walk this crazy pattern out on the marsh. And it's maybe it's a half a mile straight line, but it takes you 3 miles to get to it. And I'll actually sit there and have to watch my phone and go, okay, there's a creek coming up. I got to turn right here. And then walk 100 yards that way, and I go, okay, now I can cross this creek, and you get out there.
I get in trouble when I do that.
Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose.
I've lost doing that. There was right behind Brigantine. I went out and through the marshes, and the next thing I know, I'm like stuck, like up to the hip. One leg is on solid ground, and the other one is to its hip, to my hip in the water, in the muck. And I was stuck. I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not this flexible, so it kind of hurt. my knee is in my chin. But I love looking for new spots. I mean, Ed's been with me when I've just gone scouting, and Ed definitely loves it too. I mean, he'll just take off and disappear in the kayak down a creek, and he'll come back half an hour, 45 minutes later. And he's like, okay, here's what I found, and here's when we're going to fish it.
Yeah, that's great.
That's the best part about the kayaks. That is the absolute best part, because you can get into places boats, even people on foot can't get to.
Yeah,
I used to kayak, years ago. I think it was like 2001. I got a kayak from a rental place, and I did a lot of that. And I got out of it for a while, and I just got another kayak, a pedal kayak. And
I was going to say, I've seen your kayak.
I was on it. I think I've been on it 3 or 4 times the whole year. It's just I always have an excuse. I'm like, it's blowing a little too hard today. It's going to be too sunny today.
We'll get you out. We'll get you out next year. And I see also in chat, Greg Antel is in there. He has one too, I believe.
Yeah.
And he needs to get out there more often. I've never met him. I've never met Greg.
We keep talking about it. He and I keep talking about going out together. We just haven't lined it up. So maybe Raritan this fall we can do it.
Well, let me know when you guys want to head up. I'll head up with you. My job right now is literally fishing. Fishing is my job now. So I'm free. I'm free to go with you as soon as this COVID gets out of my house, and I'm free to interact with humans again that are not on live stream. I'm out on the water.
We'll do it.
Awesome.
There's still plenty of fishing left for this fall, man. Even in the kayaks.
I can't wait. So, and that kind of brings me to the next thing, George. When are you looking and saying, if you looked at a calendar right now, when are you saying to yourself, okay, this is when it's going to start getting serious, and I'm now locked in on striped bass for the fall?
Well, I mean, I'm going to get started pretty soon. Probably this week. I'll probably get started this week, where I'm going to really start to put some time in on some beaches, check out some structure. Locally, for sure. It's easy for me to just go local and check everything out and decide where I'm going to start to put in some time. then I'll also be taking the ride up, and I'll go to my, just traditional. And they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and I'm pretty much, I fall right into that. Like, I go to the same spots regardless. If they haven't produced for 3 years, I'm like, well, 10 years ago I did great there, so I'm going back there. And me and a buddy, we had this running joke. We keep going to the same spot. I don't think we've caught a fish there in our last like 30 trips. And we get there, and I'll take like 5 casts, and I'll be like, why are we here? Why did we come here? And he's like, I have no idea why we're here. And I'm like, this is ridiculous, that we leave. But I'll go north, and I'll go just to some of the spots that I know. It's tough. You get to the point where do you waste time looking for something, or do you go to where you traditionally have had fish? I'll stick with my tradition and go to where I usually have had fish in the past. I have my spots at Island Beach State Park, Seaside, Brick, and right up the beach and Asbury and into Raritan.
For me, that was one of the most difficult parts about, when I was just doing surf fishing for years in a row. I live in Pennsylvania, so I'm driving 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And I do like fishing South Jersey. So, which takes longer to get to South Jersey than it does to the Raritan. The Raritan, I'm there in an hour and a half. It's going to be 2.5 hours to South Jersey, but it's really tough sometimes to know I'm going to be in the car 5 hours today.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be fishing, do I really want to spend 2 hours going to a beach I've never been to and just hope that I can find the structure there? So I know what you're talking about. You want to go places where you're pretty confident.
Familiar. Yeah. It's funny. I have a buddy that he lives up there by the Raritan. He fishes the Raritan. And, he'll come down here and fish. And he's like, I love it down there, man. I love all that backwater you guys have. And I'm like, I'll trade you in a heartbeat. I love the Raritan Bay right now. So it's kind of like, the grass is always greener on the next yard.
Yeah. Are you, there's a question in the chat. Are you fishing down in Cape May County?
I do go down. I do go down to Cape May a little bit. Cape May County is pretty big, but I'll work Cape May. I'll work the beaches, the inlets. There are some spots that, there are holes and cuts that kind of just, they're there every year.
Right.
And I'll work that. And even, the point around Cape May this time of year, if you're working those jetties, which I think most of them were covered with sand. I haven't been there in a little bit, but if they're exposed this time of year, there's great weak fishing, redfish, all kinds of stuff like that around those jetties down there. And I'll look for reds. I'm horrible at it, but I'll look for them. I get frustrated and I give up pretty quickly.
Yeah. Have you found any?
I went once this year and I fished for about 3 hours. I fished about 3 hours and I didn't see any mullet and I got frustrated. I was like, there should be mullet. There should be mullet on this beach. There should be mullet. I had got reds on that beach before. And I was ready to walk off, and I looked down, and I was in ankle deep water, and all the mullet were around my feet. And I was like, "Well, son of a bitch, there they are." I'm looking behind the backs of the waves, and they weren't there, and they were right at my feet. And I was like, "Well, then there should be reds here."
Right.
And I fished it another hour, and without a touch. And I was like, "All right, this is ridiculous. Now there's no water here."
It's a tough fish to go for because there's so few. As far as we know, there's so few. They're there. Everyone, every year people are catching them. But
I mean, you look at some of some of the guys from the past, like this in the 60s and 50s, where it was common where they had big reds. They called them channel bass. They had big reds. They would get 40s and 50 pounders on the beaches here. And you look into that and you look at I try to look and see, okay, what time of year was that? And I found all that information, but those big reds aren't there. Not yet. I think that day's coming.
I do too. I've spent a lot of time talking about on this stream that I've been really looking for redfish this year in the back. I know of about a dozen spots that hold them in particular inlets or just outside of inlets. But that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for resident reds. To see if they're actually residents here or if they're just pushing through like they used to back in the, even in the 70s and 80s. I remember as a kid going down to the Point Stone Harbor at Hereford Inlet, and the real surfcasters there they're tossing it a mile. and they're bailing just bull reds. I mean, all day. And it was really quiet. They didn't tell anyone. They just bail reds all day. They put them in these huge coolers. And I think it was September, October. You know, it was
It's
after
funny
the summer.
right before this blow, I got a phone call that there was bull reds about a mile off the beach on Bunker.
Yeah.
And then I said to the guy, well, that's great information when there's 5 days of weather moving in. So what am I going to do with that? But yeah, I have been hearing for years about big bull reds off of Cape May on Bunker schools, but never really had a chance to look into it. But yeah, I think that day's coming where I think we're going to start seeing more and more of them, especially there's so many of them down south now. It's
But
you're going to see them expand their horizons.
I don't see to add to that though. I think they're here. I don't know. I think there's more here than we know. Because from the research I've done back in the 30s, 40s, they were stacking them like cordwood because they were tearing their linen fly lines. They hated them. They wanted to catch stripers.
Yeah,
they used them all for fertilizer. So I think there's a lot more here than we know. I don't know.
The only thing I'll say about that is I do know how to catch them. I'm not amazing at it, but I do know how to catch them, and I have not caught any in the back when I've gone specifically targeting them where they should be.
Ed, do you think it's kind of like 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, there were sheep's head. Because I remember as a kid seeing sheep's head swim around the poles. Yep. Never even thought to try for them. And now there's this, the sheep's head craze, you would call it. Everybody's sheep's head fishing, and you're seeing tons of them caught. Well, those fish have been here for years. Guys have changed their tactics and changed the way they fished for them.
Look up in New York. There's Sheep's Head Bay. It's named Sheep's Head Bay for a reason. You know, I don't know. I think, like you said, people just never fish for them, and now that the tactics and the tackles out there, they're fishing for them.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Me too.
So. They would be awesome, as the striper continue to move north, which I think they are. I think the bulk of the biomass is north, and I don't think it's necessarily anything that we did wrong. It's just that they are more comfortable up north now, so they're just migrating and living north. And if that's the case, I'm very happy with a smaller population of striped bass if the reds start coming in.
We fought this battle to get the bunker back when bunker was almost non-existent. You couldn't find bunker schools anywhere. I think that was a double-edged sword for us. We got the bunker back, but now if you don't find those bunker schools, you're not going to find the bass. The bass are always going to be with the bunker. I think that's part of the problem with our fall surf fishing now is these fish aren't coming inshore to forage like they used to. They're not coming in and feeding on the crabs, and they're not coming in to feed on everything that's around the jetties because there's massive schools of bunker out there, and they're just hanging on them.
Oh yeah, they're going over the OC reef, and it's 8 miles off. It's like, well, I can't touch them.
No,
and it's so frustrating.
Yeah,
so we remember back in the day.
We got the bunker back, though. We got the bunker back.
Yeah, we got Omega's doing their best to get rid of them.
Yeah, I've been watching them. Yeah,
they're all over. It's like it was back in the 90s with them. I mean, I'm seeing more of them this year than I've seen since the 90s.
Yeah,
and they're taking bass with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Bass, cobia, everything.
Yeah.
Yep. Reds down there. Yep.
I keep trying to get the guy who does the Menhaden Defenders.org, trying to get Omega out of the Chesapeake. He won't answer me, so I guess he doesn't want to come on and talk about it. But I think it's a big problem. Again, It's not an anti-commercial thing. I get it, but these guys just rape the water when they go through. I mean, they destroy everything.
I believe I think they went over their quota. They went over their quota in the Chesapeake Bay. I think it was last year or the year before, and they didn't care. Yep. They paid the fine. Said we couldn't get out in the ocean, so we'd rather pay the fine.
Yeah, and it's Maryland doesn't do anything. Virginia doesn't do anything. DC doesn't do anything. They just let it happen because
money
it's a lot of money. Yeah, it's a lot of money. A lot of money. Man, we're coming up close on an hour and a half here. So what have we not talked about? I mean, this is great conversation as far as I'm concerned, but are there any things that you want to share with people that want to get out there and get on some bass?
So if you don't have a boat, you want to catch fish in the surf, time putting in the time. If you think you're going to go for a couple hours and just walk up on a random beach and throw for an hour and catch fish, yeah, you can catch fish. But if you're serious about it, you really want to catch fish, you got to put some time in. You got to be willing to walk. You got to be willing to rifle through your bag, try different things, be able to read the water. If you can't read the water, you should probably go at low tide. Go at low tide during the day in an area you plan on fishing in the dark and scope it out. See where the bars are, see where the cuts are, see where the water is moving. Because a lot of times you'll have that water coming down the beach and it'll hit a spot where it just wants to turn and go out. And you'll see that water ripping out and you're going to want to fish. And it's a lot of times, when I'm walking the beach, say like Island Beach, I'll walk and I'll fish. There's just cut after cut after cut, say every, couple hundred yards. And if you find fish, say there's 2 bars in a cut, sometimes they're all sitting on the left side of that cut. You'll find them sitting on this ledge, just inside of this cut. And then you move down to the next cut. And if you work it the same way, you're going to find that they're sitting the same way. They're sitting on that left side of the cut again, So a lot of times what you find and what you figure out will carry on.
That's a good point. I think a lot of people forget that when you're surf fishing, it's the same as it's any other kind of fishing. If the trend is that the striped bass are on the wind protected side of a marsh, you fish the wind protected side of the next marsh and the next marsh and the next marsh. And it's the same thing with the surf. They're going to set up in preferred areas. They act, it's not like they're individual fish with their own personalities, They act the same under the same conditions or similar conditions. And I think a lot of times we give fish way too much credit. They're not smart. They're really not. And they should be predictable. So if you stumble on a bite and conditions that are causing a bite, you should look to replicate that in the same conditions in the same time frame, and that should work. At least that's your first thing. So to your point, if they're on the right hand side or the south side of the cut on the outside of the bar, you should be tossing there first.
Yeah, you work that until it's dry, and then move to the next one and do the same thing. And I think you'll see. It's not always going to work. It doesn't always work, but a lot of times, you will see that pattern. And you just stick to that pattern. I mean, and you can't give up. I can't tell you how many times I've walked down the beach and not done anything. And, when I'm up, in certain spots, I'll walk, 1.5 miles, 2 miles. And I'll get to the end of my walk and find that they're sitting in a hole, loaded in the one hole.
Right.
And just sit there and beat the hell. I did it one night. I walked away from my buddy and I got all the way down to this hole and it was dark. And, I purposely worked to this one spot and I got there and that was the end of my walk. I'm going to turn around and walk back and work the water back. And I hit a fish and I was like, do I flash my light and let them know? And I was like, nah, not yet. And I hit another fish and I go, all right, 2 fish. I'm going to flash my light. And I flashed my light and then I hit a 3rd fish and he came running down. I said, it's loaded in here. And we just sat there and beat the hell out of him. Well, he decided it's got to be better further. So he went a little further and it was dead. It was just that one spot where they were sitting. And then it was interesting because we left that and we were like, okay, we're done. We started working our way back, but we fish our way back and we had fish the whole way back too. So what happened? I don't know. I don't know how that happens, but you don't give up. If you plan on fishing, you work that tide to the end and stick with it because a lot of times it'll pay off. But those wind directions this time of year are key. Getting that bait in on the beach, beginning of nor'easters, beginning of storms. And when I see that wind go northwest, I'm going to be on a beach somewhere.
So I never did that. I love fishing before nor'easter. I love it, or just as it starts.
Yeah.
I just love that. But I've never really targeted the northwest. So that's some good information there.
No, I mean the bunker swims right into the wind, so usually it brings them right to the beach.
All right, people. If you didn't know that, you got to write that down because
that was from my nugget from earlier.
Yeah, I've never thought about that. I'd never thought about that ever.
They're filter feeders, so they swim with their mouths open, and they're on the surface. If they're on the surface, they'll swim into that wind current. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Man. All right, here I got a couple of questions I want to make sure we hit before we end here. From I Feel Fishy. This one, just to put it in context, you're fishing at night. So are you marking in some way, shape, or form where the cuts are so that you know where to fish when you're going out at night?
Yeah, a lot of times I use landmarks behind me. Like if I'm walking somewhere, I'll turn around and see what I have behind me, and I forget a lot. I used to put there was a couple spots where I would put stuff, like maybe put something in the sand up by a dune or something.
Gotcha.
But then I found out like some of the locals that knew I was doing that were moving my shit. So then I fished it in the wrong spot.
I will say also, you can usually most moons you can usually see the cuts too.
Yeah, you can see the white. You'll see the whitewater. If I'll see whitewater to the left and whitewater to the right, and I'll stand there. I'll stand there for 10 or 15 minutes and wait to see maybe a settle come in, and then I'll know where the edges are. The edges of that bar are the edges, and where that cut is, where the deeper water is, and then you can start working it. I really don't like it too flat. I don't want it flat. I want a little bit of whitewater, and even up to moderate whitewater. That seems to be a little more productive. It kind of, I guess, confuses the bait in the wash, and
right,
get those fish feeding. And then once you get into the like Thanksgiving, and you're throwing like metal and teasers for those fish. I think like Betty and Nick's usually has a thing every year like Thanksgiving, and that's usually a metal and teaser bite where guys are just lined up trying to get free T-shirts.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in.
Yeah,
I'll go for a free T-shirt.
Yeah.
One last question: what type of line and pound are you using for fishing these artificials?
For in the fall, my 9-footer, I'll have 20-pound braid with 20 or 30-pound leader. Usually a 30-pound leader. When I know I'm going to be going for bigger fish, like in the spring or even like up to Raritan, I may up that to a 30-pound main line. And even like in the spring, I use a 40-pound main line and 50 or 60-pound leader for the spring, because it's typically I'm getting my bigger fish in the spring. I not that I can't handle a big fish. 20-pound braid should be plenty if you get your drag set right. And I'll sit there and I set my drags. I hook it up to the fence and pull it and I get it the way I want it, where I know what's going to pull that line out. But yeah, 20-pound braid this time of year, 20-pound braid, 30-pound leader's fine. Especially on an open beach. If you're fishing some kind of structure, I would suggest you go a little heavier. If I'm fishing a jetty, up that leader, corkers. And I have a hookless gaff that I use that I take on the jetty. It's basically it's a gaff that's got 300-pound mono wrapped several times and then epoxied on. So if I get it on a plug, I get a plug and I get that, I can just reach in and hook that mono onto the treble hooks and pull it up without actually sticking a gaff in it.
You got to be kidding me.
No,
I've been looking for something like that for years.
I'll send you a picture of it. Yeah, it's a hookless gaff.
I've been trying. I was even talking to a guy who makes gaffs. I'm like, I want something that I'm not gaffing the fish, that's going to let me get it up on these high jetties.
Yeah, it doesn't work as well. If I'm throwing a bucktail, there's not much I can do with a hookless gaff, because I need some hooks to grab hold of. But yeah, it works great with plugs.
I'll put a teaser on there and then you can do it.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there anything, Ed? Is there anything you wanted to put in there? I've been trying to watch the questions.
No,
I think we got a lot of them.
I mean, Dean mentioned the demo day on October 16th.
Yes,
I rescheduled for the Century stuff. So check that out. Other than that, I think we've hit pretty much everything. I don't want to bleed George dry. I want to get him back on for another episode. So I don't want to beat him up too bad.
The demo day is October 16th at Bayview Park at 6805 Long Beach Boulevard in LBI. And there's going to be, Century's going to be there. I fish with all Century rods from Advanced Fishing. They supply me with rods. They're the best rods in the world. If you never fished a Century rod, you go to the demo and try them out. But there's also going to be tons of custom plug builders there. Some of the best plug builders around. I think Darby Creek's going to be there. GRS, Lights Out from Massachusetts is going to be there. Plug bags, custom plug bags, Dark Star. There's going to be some jig guys there, and a food truck with funnel cake. And I'm going to miss it. And my whole thing was the funnel cake.
You're gonna. I was gonna say I'm going for the funnel cake.
That's that was my whole plan. I just want a funnel cake, but I have to go to South Carolina that weekend. It was rescheduled. It was supposed to be yesterday, so it was rescheduled for 2 weeks from now.
Well, South Carolina. I mean, it's not like you're going somewhere terrible. It's not like you're going to Camden.
It's not a fishing trip.
Oh,
yeah, it's not good.
Right. You can turn anything into a fishing trip.
It's true, and I've done that. It doesn't usually work out too good for me.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife. We have our anniversary coming up, and we're trying to decide, are we going to go somewhere like in the mountains, or are we going to? And she's like, well, we could go somewhere on the coast. And she was talking about. She's like, you can bring your fishing rod. I'm like, that's a trap. I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm bringing it. She's like, why? I don't mind. She's like, I'll just read a book or something. I'm like, we've been married like 25 years. I'm too smart for this.
I did it on a cruise ship. We pulled into Belize, and I had a captain pick me up at the dock.
You
and
have to in Belize.
I vanished for the day. And she was fine with it. Yeah,
I
mean,
mean, Belize is something different. If you get a chance, man,
it was amazing. Yeah,
bonefish.
No, snook. We were going to go for tarpon. We went for snook up in the into the jungle. We went in this like crazy winding in the Belize River, I think, way up. And there were guys trolling with like line tied to their toes. It was just insane.
That's how you lose toes, guys.
Yeah, he was driving the boat with a line tied to his foot. Yeah, I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. But it worked. It worked.
Yeah.
Oh, great. All right, guys. So I think at this point we're gonna close this one down. I want to thank George. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It's awesome that you're able to come on and answer a bunch of questions. And man, I learned a lot. I want to get out there and break out my 9-foot surf rod. That's all I have that I have in the rotation right now. And get on some of these fish, definitely, especially with the weather the way it is. I have no reason not to just go down and, get on the sand.
Yeah, just shoot me a message if you want to come down. We'll get out.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as for next week's show, everybody, we do not have a guest confirmed yet, but I'm going to put this out to everybody here. I would like to have somebody to come on that is an expert in sea bass fishing. And there are a couple of people I've been talking to, but not quite sure that we can sync up on schedule. So if there's somebody that or if you are that person, it would be nice to have somebody coming on to talk about sea bass as it really kicks off and we get going there. So just let me know, rich@fatdadfishing.com. And in the meantime, I'm going to tell you the same thing I say every week, but I know the weather is pretty bad, but do whatever you can. Get out there, get on the water, get some tight lines. We'll see you next week.